I am your host, Kingsley Oguderi, the Unapologetic African. Welcome to Kedu Africa, the Unapologetic African, Exploitation of Africa, a podcast that delves into the dark history and the ongoing reality of how the Western world has taken advantage of the continent and its resources for centuries. From colonialism to neocolonialism, from slavery to debt traps, we will explore the various ways in which Africa has been exploited and how it affects the continent's present and future.
Of northern Niger in the early 1970s, they promised to build a little Paris in the country. However, till this day, the mining towns remain dusty and neglected, scoured by desert sandstorms and barely touched by the mineral wealth it ships off to Europe each year. The French embraced nuclear power to free itself from over-reliance on foreign oil, and just like that, this remote corner of Africa became a linchpin to French national interests.
Ghana is the world's second biggest producer of cocoa, but the country only earns about 2% of the $100 billion industry. Cocoa growers here export most of their cocoa beans to Europe and North America, where they're turned into chocolate.
We are shipping out the cocoa in its raw state. And if you look at the value chain of cocoa, money is made in the finished product.
While big chocolate companies rake in billions a year, many cocoa farmers live in poverty, earning just $2 a day. And Ghanaian entrepreneurs like Michael have struggled to open chocolate factories in their home country.
We are trying to decolonize chocolate. This time around, we are saying that it can be done right here in Ghana.
Future. The stealing of African resources. Today, we'll focus on one particular aspect of the exploitation of Africa, the stealing of its resources. Africa is one of the most resource-rich continents on Earth, with vast reserves of minerals, oil, gas, timber, and agricultural land. However, instead of benefiting Africans, these resources have often been siphoned off by foreign companies and governments, leaving little to no benefit for the people who live on the land.
Though Niger got its independence in 1960, France still plays an influential role in the country, thereby playing an invincible to the naked eye monopoly game to tap its natural resources. It is France that gets the real benefit of uranium ore in Niger by reinforcing the Franco-African policy in the continent. Here is how. Niger's government has been demanding a better deal from Paris, and specifically from state-owned nuclear company Areva. The two sides began talking more than 6 years ago, but arrived at an agreement that still places Niger under France's thumb. In 2014, Niger announced it had successfully renegotiated uranium extraction contracts with Areva to secure a greater share of the wealth deriving from their resources. Years later, there are still calls into question the benefits for Niger in the new contract. Areva and Niger's expired agreements had never been made public. The country's newly elected president said that the deals are a throwback to the post-colonial era, where France played a dominant role in the economies of its former African territories.
How is that fair? Let's start with some historical examples of how stealing of Africa's resources has taken place. During the colonial era, European powers carved out Africa like a cake, drawing arbitrary borders that divided communities and resources. They used violence and forced labor to extract minerals like gold, diamonds, copper, often with the help of African intermediaries who profited from the trade. The profits went back to Europe, while Africans were left with environmental degradation, displacement, and poverty. After African countries gained independence in the mid-20th century, the exploitation continued, but under new forms. Western companies continue to extract resources like oil and gas, often in collusion with corrupt African leaders who received kickbacks and personal fortunes. Meanwhile, the terms of trade favored Western countries, which could buy African commodities at low prices and sell manufactured goods at high prices, perpetuating the continent's dependence on imports. What a sick feeling it leaves in my stomach. Present day reality. Present day reality. The stealing of African resources continue under new guises such as land grabbing, tax avoidance, and illicit financial flows. Companies and governments buy or lease huge tracts of land for agricultural or extractive purposes, often displacing communities and causing environmental harm. They also use tax havens and transfer pricing to evade taxes and move profits out of Africa, depriving governments of much needed revenue.
In some cases, they even engage in illegal activities such as smuggling, bribery, to gain access to resources.